So I've been a little remiss, and I say that because I essentially created a couple of videos several months ago. I think it might have been like 8 months ago or so. And in these videos, I offered up some tips and pointers for those individuals that were interested in selling comics outside of eBay, and specifically for those that were interested in selling comics on Instagram. And I think I did 2 videos. And in these videos, I think were pretty solid in that they offer tips and pointers for how to get one's self set up to actually sell comics on Instagram. And I think these videos were pretty good. And I've had a lot of people actually reach out to me asking questions, not about the videos per se, but about a video for how to go about buying comics on Instagram. And what I would do is I was basically pointing people for months and months back to the other videos, the ones that I had created for sellers. And I basically encourage people to take the advice that was in that video and flip it. And it worked. I mean, it kind of worked. But I've had a lot of people reach out over the last several months asking questions about when am I going to create a video that is dedicated for buyers. And I was hesitant. I was honestly hesitant to do it. And I don't know why. I'm going to just be honest. I don't know why. But I guess the straw that broke the camel's back was a comment that I received from someone just the other day, basically asking the same question again. And I decided that now was the time to basically create that video. And so that's this video. So I want to encourage you, if you are interested in learning more or hearing more about how to go about buying comics on Instagram, I want to encourage you to stay tuned for the video. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you to do that now, because this is the type of content that I release. Sometimes a little late, but better late than never. Stay tuned for the video. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my recordings. As I mentioned in the intro, this is a video that is really dedicated to helping people out there figure out how they want to go about buying comics on Instagram, if at all, to be honest with you, because this isn't necessarily something that you have to do. It is, however, a viable means to add to your comic book collection. And part of what makes Instagram, I think, attractive is that you can potentially get books at lower prices than what you will be able to get them for on eBay. And eBay isn't all that bad, but eBay has some fees associated with it. Not only are there the eBay fees, but there's the PayPal fees, and then there's the taxes, which makes the price of books go up because sellers want to pocket as much money as possible. And so if there are fees associated with it, they increase the asking price for the book in an effort to offset some of those fees. And so by selling books on Instagram and by buying books on Instagram, you have theoretically the potential to actually pick up some books at some lower prices. But by doing it, you actually expose yourself to a little bit of risk. And that's why I'm creating this video, is to essentially offer you some practical tips and pointers for how you might be able to find books, but also to reduce some of the inherent risk with buying books off of a platform like eBay, which has all of this infrastructure and policies in place to be able to protect you as a buyer. And so in this video, what I'll be doing is offering you some things that you can consider, some things for you to think about. I will say, however, that if there are any people out there that are watching this video that have done business on Instagram, I want to encourage you to add your thoughts to the comment section, because I think that we can all continue learning from one another, because certainly I'm no expert in buying off of Instagram. I've done it, and I've done it for years, and I've done it successfully, but I don't know everything. And so if you have some tips, some pointers, some techniques, I want to encourage you to leave those comments in the comment section. That way, again, we can all kind of learn from one another. Now, with all of that said, one of the first tips I want to offer you is a means to actually find comics on Instagram, because that's like the first step. First, you have to find the book, right? And so I want to talk about that. So one of the best ways to find books on Instagram is to use hashtags. And the best way to maybe think about hashtags is to think of it in terms of a container. If I have a piece of content that I want you to find, I will put it in this container and I will reference that container, which will allow you to find it, because you're going to reference that container and you'll be able to find everything that has been placed inside. And you'll be able to find not just my stuff, but every other person out there that is trying to make something available for you to find. They will put it in that container. And so if you think about hashtags in that way, it's a great way to kind of organize your thoughts, because you can't necessarily search for a book on Instagram. Instagram doesn't work that way. Instagram uses hashtags. And so again, if the hashtag is the container and the book is in that container, if you can find the container, you can find all the books. So 2 hashtags that I want to encourage you to follow are Comics for Sale, FOR, and Comics for Sale. The number 4 instead of FOR, it is the number. So Comics FOR Sale and Comics for Sale. Those are 2 hashtags that you can follow right now. What I mean by follow is the same way that you can search for a person on Instagram and follow that person. Like if you search for Regie Collects on Instagram, you will find me and you can hit the follow button so that you can see all of the content that I put up. If you follow hashtags, it's the same way. You search for the hashtag, you find it, you follow it. And so anytime someone references that hashtag, that container, you actually get to see what they're putting up. So it's a great way for you to be able to identify books that people are actually offering for sale. You don't necessarily have to know the person. If you know the hashtag, you can find the book. Now, one of the great things about using hashtags is that it allows you to actually find sellers as well. So again, if you know the container and the container is Comics for Sale, I have put into that container Thor 165. You use the hashtag to find Thor 165. And if you find that book, you realize that it's me. You actually have the ability to see that that's my book, and then you can follow my profile, thereby following someone who may be selling lots of books. So by following the hashtag, you can backtrack it to the seller, which allows you to identify a healthy number of people that may be selling books on an ongoing basis. So one of the other tips that I want to offer is that when you find someone that is selling comics on Instagram, you want to take note of how many followers they actually have. Instagram isn't like eBay in that you actually have a score that, the seller has a score and you get to look at the reviews and look at the comments. Instagram isn't set up like that because it's not an e-commerce platform per se. So what you want to do, however, is to look for sellers that have lots of followers. And in my head, if someone has lots of followers, theoretically, they've done lots of transactions, which means that there are lots of people that have done business with them, people that you can potentially talk to figure out and find out how smooth or not that transaction happened to be. If someone is actively selling on Instagram and they're selling a lot of books, they're putting up a lot of posts. If they're putting up a lot of posts and they're not taking care of their customers, rest assured those customers will leave some comments on that public profile that you'll be able to see. And so by looking for sellers who have lots of followers, it gives you the ability to do a little bit of risk mitigation. And this is not 100% protective, right? This is not, eBay or PayPal's buyer protection, but this is one mechanism to reduce some of the risk associated with buying comics on Instagram. So look for those people that have lots of followers. The other thing that I'm a huge fan of is doing business with people. Now, what I mean by that is that you as an individual, or a seller for that matter, has the ability to create lots of different profiles online. They can create a profile that is focused on their family life and things that they like to do outside of comics. They could do a profile that is dedicated to their personal collection where they're showing books that are part of their PC. They can also create a profile that is dedicated purely to selling comics. And sometimes what happens is that people set up these profiles and they're nothing more than a persona. There is no name, there is no address, there's no email, there's no real details as to who the person is behind the persona. It is just a selling persona. That's it. I find a little bit of discomfort with that, right? Because I like to do business with the individual. And so I know, for example, there are a couple of dealers that are local to me that do business on Instagram, and they have a persona up there. But I also know that they're real people because they have email addresses. And when you message them, they message back. And I've had an opportunity to actually meet these people. That gives me comfort that it's not just a faceless person back there, right? And so you want to give some thought to, who is it that you actually want to do business with? Do you want to do business with people, or do you want to do business with personas? Now, with all of that said, I recognize that there are some people, because of their jobs, because of their professions, because of whatever, they don't want to say who they are publicly for one reason or another. And I respect that. And what I would say is if that is the case, there are ways to get to know people beyond just what is shown in their profile. And so you want to dig a little bit deeper. If this is a book or a person or a persona that you want to do business with, you want to dig a little bit deeper. And so you want to, make sure that you just don't toss them out because it's a generic profile. Spend a little time, go a little bit deeper, and we'll talk about how to do that in a couple of other tips that I'll get to in just a couple of moments. One of the things that makes Instagram really attractive, as I've talked about a little bit already, is the fact that there are fewer fees associated with doing business on Instagram. So what I've found is that there are actually comic shops that do business on Instagram, and they do it for a couple of reasons. One, to avoid some of the fees associated with eBay, to avoid some of the taxes associated with eBay. And I'm not saying whether that is right or wrong. I'm simply just making a point. There are some people or some shops out there that will not have their own website, their own e-commerce portal, because there are fees that are associated with that merchant account, right? There are transaction fees, there are hosting fees, there are domain fees. There's all kinds of fees associated with having a dedicated website. And so going to Instagram is actually a viable means for a shop to actually do business. And so that is one way that you can reduce some of your risk, is you can actually identify comic shops that have brick and mortar stores that actually do business on Instagram. And again, this is about risk mitigation. If there is a shop behind it, then that gives you a little bit of comfort that it's not just this faceless persona that's out there. The other thing is that there are actually a lot of dealers, a lot of private dealers that actually do business on Instagram as well. And some of them have, websites, but they don't necessarily have e-commerce, but they might have a website to promote themselves and their business. These are folks that will go to cons, but will also operate out of a storage facility or a guest bedroom or something like that, right? Reputable people that are trying to do business in comics, but because they kind of sort of do it on the side and maybe as not a full-time gig, they're always looking for ways to kind of optimize their spend. And so Instagram, again, is a great way to do that. And so again, when you are thinking about who you want to buy comics from, buying from a brick and mortar store that happens to be on Instagram is a good way. Buying from a dealer who also happens to be on Instagram is also not a bad way. And I actually have a lot of referrals that I can send your way if you're curious about either local comic shops or about private dealers that are on IG, that are reputable, that I've done business with. If you reach out to me at Regie Collects on Instagram, I will absolutely pass some of that information on to you. But these are some of the ways that you can actually reduce some of your risk. Put another way, you don't have to just buy from people on Instagram. You can actually buy from brick and mortar stores and also from private dealers, many of which have fantastic reputations out there in the comic book community. We've spoken about this just a little bit, but one of the other ways that you can reduce some of your risk associated with buying comics on Instagram is to use PayPal. And I should probably back up and say that you don't actually buy comics through Instagram. Instagram is essentially a way to find books, to find sellers. It is not necessarily an e-commerce platform, but it allows you to find books, and then you can go through direct messages to figure out the terms of a deal and all that kind of stuff. And so I want to definitely encourage you to consider using something like PayPal as a means to pay for the comics that you may be finding. And again, the reason for that is that PayPal actually has some buyer protection in place. You will potentially have to pay a couple of extra bucks for the book that you buy from the seller. Sellers on Instagram will often give two prices. One price will be for friends and family, and one price will be for the buyer protection. The buyer protection tends to be about 3% or so higher than the friends or family. And so if for your own protection, for your own comfort, you want to do the buyer protection, no seller is going to say no to that, right? Most will say absolutely no problem. You can do it that way. Just add on the 3% to the transaction when you send me the money. And so this is just a great way to kind of, again, reduce some of your risk. But rest assured that you can use Zelle or Venmo or any of the other platforms that are out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be PayPal, but that is certainly a viable option for you. To the point that I was making earlier about personas versus people, one of the ways that you can, again, improve your comfort level with someone on Instagram, whether it be a person or a persona, right? It doesn't matter, is to actually follow those people for a period of time before you actually do a deal with them, right? If you find sellers that are doing business on Instagram, you can actually follow them for a period of time, and you watch for how often they put posts up, how quickly books sell, how they interact with people that post up comments on their page. You can even send them messages and see how they respond. You can even comment on their posts to see how they respond. My point is that you can actually spend some time observing these individuals long before you actually send them any money, long before you actually do any deals with them. And again, it's a way to kind of improve your comfort level with handing over some money to someone that you may not know. So follow them for a period of time. How long? It is really up to you to decide how long is long enough. One of the other major tips that I want to offer is that you spend some time increasing your own number of followers. And there are several reasons for that. I'm going to talk about some of them now, and I'll talk about some of them in a little bit. But by increasing the number of followers you have, it actually increases the likelihood that you will have some overlap with a seller. And this comes into play when you have your followers and the seller has followers and there's some overlap. You have the ability to reach out to some of those individuals that follow you and that follow that seller. You can reach out to them and ask them questions as to whether they've actually done business with that seller. Have they bought from them? Have they sold, books to them? How did the transactions go? How was the shipping? How fast did they ship? Did they encounter any problems? By having that overlap, you actually have the ability to get to know how that seller actually does business. And again, it's just one additional way to kind of mitigate and or reduce some of the risk associated with handing over some money. The other reason why you actually want to increase your number of followers is that interacting on Instagram is actually really cool. It is a really great and dynamic way to actually get involved with the comic book community. And I will tell you that Instagram is actually my favorite social media platform out of them all. And I've been on all of them and I have profiles on many of them. Instagram by far is my favorite. I absolutely enjoy it. And by and large, it is kind of set up for comics, right? Because it's all about the picture. It's all about the image. It's all about what you're able to see in that little square box that gets put up on the page. And so I think that Instagram is great for being part of the comic book community. And there are all of these great tags that you can use to put up posts. to introduce yourself, if you will, to get involved with the comic book community, right? There's like Mutant Monday and Webhead Wednesday and Thor Thursday and Slab Sunday and Silver Age Saturday and blah, blah. There's all of these great hashtags that are out there that enable you to actually show off your comic book collection and to get involved and to be a true part of the comic book community. So get involved and increase your number of subscribers and followers and all that kind of stuff. And part of the way that you do that is by putting up posts and using the hashtags, yes, but you also can increase it by following people, by liking people's pictures that they put up, by commenting, by sending messages. It is a great way to get involved. And so if you are not on Instagram, I want to encourage you to head over to Instagram, create a profile, follow me, send me a message, and I will follow you back. How about that? So at least you'll have one person. No, it is honestly a fantastic platform, and I definitely want to encourage you to check it out because it has a lot of advantages for you. As you increase your comfort level with Instagram and your familiarity with the platform, and you increase the number of followers and all that kind of stuff, one of the things that you want to keep an open mind about is trading comics. Yes, buying and selling is great, but you can actually trade comics as well. And I can tell you for a fact that this is something that I've done over the last couple of years, and I've enjoyed it, right? And in my mind, there is nothing better than bundling up some books that don't necessarily fit in my collection, sending them off, and having a stack of books come back to me that fit perfectly in my collection, and I never had to spend any money to get them other than postage. It is a fantastic way to improve your collection. And so there has to be, like I said, a lot of comfort and a lot of trust with the person that you are sending books to. And so I think if you follow some of the tips that I offered earlier in the video, this could eventually be something that you want to consider, and eventually maybe even something that you'll do. Trading is really, really cool. Let me just tell you that. So one of the last tips that I want to offer, and it actually dovetails with something that I mentioned a short while ago, is that you can use Instagram to actually put up a classified ad. You can literally put up a classified ad to help you find comics that you're looking for. And you can do it in two ways. There's a story, which expires after 24 hours, and there's your gallery page where you can put up a permanent post. And in both of those places, you have the ability to basically say to your followers what you're looking for. And I've used this a lot for my run on Amazing Spider-Man. I would put up a post and I would literally put up the numbers of the books that I was looking for. And I would get people responding back saying, I have this book, that book, this other one. It is really a fantastic way to have books find you. You can put, if you have the followers there, your followers, your friends, members of this community are everywhere. They're always looking at books. They're spending time on Instagram when you're not necessarily on Instagram. And they have other friends who have other friends, right? And it's a great way to, again, to cast a wide net and to be able to find books that maybe you can't not find through hashtags, because maybe the person that has this comic doesn't know how to use hashtags. And there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to use them. And so the tips that I've offered over the course of this video are all designed to help you familiarize yourself with Instagram, to find books for sale, to find sellers, to reduce your risk, and in some cases, to even help the books to find you. And that is a really sweet thing if you can make that happen. But again, I hope that this video has been helpful. If you've watched this video and you have some additional tips and pointers, I want to encourage you to put those comments in the comment section so that we can continue learning from one another. If you've enjoyed this video, I want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button. If you're watching this and you haven't yet subscribed, I want to encourage you to do that as well, because this is the type of content that I release on an ongoing basis. Now, before I wrap this video up, I want to give you an opportunity to add a really cool book to your collection. And here's the thing, you don't even have to go to Instagram to win it. This is the book right here. It's actually a pretty cool book. This is Strange Tales number 138. It is an 8.0 with off-white to white pages. This is a Dormammu, Eternity, and Tony Stark appearance in this really fantastic book. Again, Strange Tales number 138, written by Stephen Ditko and Stan Lee. and also has some artwork in here by Stephen Ditko. A really, really cool book that someone, I think, wrote Mom on the back of. But this is a really cool book, and this book can actually be yours simply for being a subscriber of the channel, being a resident of the United States, resident of Canada, or have a mailing address in the US. Those are essentially the only criteria you need to be in the running for this cool book. And if you do meet those criteria, I want to encourage you to head over to the community tab. Once you get there, you find a post where I'm talking about this book. You click the MailChimp link, you go to MailChimp, you plug in 3 pieces of information. 2 pieces of information are relevant to you, and 1 is a phrase that I'll give you in just a moment. You then tune in to the Ready, Set, Go preview show on Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time to find out if you are the winner. That's it. It's relatively straightforward to enter the contest. And if for some reason you cannot find the community tab, if you search for Regie Collects Go Collect Giveaway, in that video, I show you all of the steps to being able to find the community tab. Now, with all of that said, the phrase that you need for this book is Fury. Fury, as in Nick Fury. That is the phrase that you plug in to get into the running. And with that, I want to wish you all luck. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram, shocker, at Regie Collects, or you can send me an email to reggie@regiecollects.com. Take care.